Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. Stick around till the end to hear about entering the giveaway to win community colors, emotes, weapon skins, sidekicks, avatars, or even the battle pass, and voting for the next legends. And if you want to skip all this and get straight into the information, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. In these analyses, I wanted to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class. So I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapons unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all of this data, I use the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, On Miss refers to the move not connecting with an opponent, and On Hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent. I'm going to be doing my analysis today on the next voted in legend, Thor. Thor is the son of Odin who created the tournament. Thor has participated in the tournament frequently by jumping in from the stands, and he coined the term Brawlhalla, in fact. In the game's lore, he's basically just a big fan of the tournament that became a participant. Oh well. Lore has never been the strong suit. Moving on. Thor's weapons are Orb and Hammer. He's seen quite a bit of competitive play during his tenure in Brawlhalla. He was even considered one of the best characters in the game at one point and is still considered really strong. This is at least partially due to his stat spread with 6 attack, 4 dexterity, 7 defense, and 5 speed. This is a pretty bulky spread offering decent kill power and defense and not terrible speed. His weapons are both additionally pretty good in the metagame right now. So, are his SIGs just as good as the strong base he has, or are they the limiting factor on his kit? Well, let's find out. Let's start with his Orb. Orb's side SIG has 22 frames of startup, active frames from 23 to 28, and 42 to 48 with an FAF of 59. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thor swings his orb around him twice attached to a lightning bolt and slamming it into the ground. This has above average startup and average FAF. It's just average in terms of its frame data, but it does have some decent hitboxes for coverage in front of him and can punish opponents' neutral dodging out of a neutral light on Orb. It's not the fastest and can be punished pretty hard if you miss it since Thor doesn't move very far during this signature. Orb neutral SIG has 22 frames of startup, active frames from 23 to 32 with an FAF of 61. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thor transforms into a bolt of lightning and rockets himself into the air with a huge range on his ascent. The SIG has above average frame data both in terms of its startup and its FAF. It's not incredibly fast, but can catch opponents jumping a lot or recovering high. Additionally, it functions excellently as a recovery tool via gravity canceling thanks to its huge travel distance, and that whenever coupled with Thor's high defense, this makes it very easy for him to make it back to the stage in almost any scenario. This may not be the best SIG in terms of offensive capabilities, though it's certainly not bad in that capacity, but what it lacks there it makes up for in terms of utility on his kit. Orb down SIG has 28 frames of startup, active frames from 29 to 41, and 56 to 62 with an FAF of 79. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Thor jumps upward and then descends downward in front of him with active hitboxes on his descent. This concludes with an electric pulse at the landing point. One unique thing about this SIG is that it can be charged after the descent and before the electric pulse, so it can create a delayed attacking hitbox which is good for mind games and for slide charging off stage. It has well above average startup and FAF thanks to both the travel distance as well as the lengthy attack animation. But the utility with this SIG I think lies in the potential delay and mix-up it can cause with the pulse at the end. The hitboxes on it aren't bad, and I think it's really unique. Next up is his Hammer. Hammer's side SIG has 19 frames of startup, active frames from 20 to 29 with an FAF of 55. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move connect, it converts into a second hit with active frames from 54 to 61 with a new FAF of 83. Thor charges forward, surrounding himself in a storm cloud. If this initial hit makes contact, Thor concludes with a swing from his hammer. Startup on this move is average, and FAF is slightly below average on miss. The SIG has good coverage in front of him, but the first hitboxes are only present overlapping his hurtbox, so basically any disjointed move can beat it out, like downlight on gauntlets or hammer for instance. Hammer neutral SIG has 11 frames of startup, active frames from 12 to 37 with an FAF of 57. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. The move can be held and extended to frame 74 with a new FAF of 93. Holy crap does this move come out fast. The initial hitboxes on it are rather small, but it's great for catching jumping opponents and those recovering high or trying to land on Thor. Not to mention the added length this SIG can be held for makes it pretty solid in my opinion, though it does just have an okay FAF and Thor remains stationary during the whole SIG, so it makes him a sitting duck should it miss. However, it's a pretty good SIG in spite of this, I think. Hammer Down SIG has 21 frames of startup, active frames from 22 to 52 with an FAF of 71. It functions very slightly differently on miss than it does on hit. On hit, the move retains the same amount of active frames, but Thor has 3 fewer frames of end lag, making his FAF on hit 68 for some reason. Thor jumps upward, throwing his hammer away from him for several swings, and then summons it back to him with a flash of lightning. The SIG has above average startup and FAF, but given its travel distance and lengthy animation, this doesn't surprise me. Thor is stationary during the active frames of this move in the air, so if you miss it, you can be punished pretty hard, but it has a pretty high amount of active frames, making it quite useful for catching opponents jumping, and it covers a really large horizontal range. So, overall, his SIGs are honestly not super great in terms of their frame data. In terms of startup, his hammer neutral SIG is the only one that has below average startup, and it comes out pretty damn fast. Likewise, the FAF on all of them is either average or higher, well, for the most part, so the frame data, it didn't exactly blow my mind. That being said, his SIGs have an insane amount of utility on his kit despite their slower nature. Orb Neutral SIG puts his recovery in a tier of its own, and Orb Down SIG gives him a large amount of potential for mix-ups and timing alterations, so I think that they're really good. His Hammer SIGs have interesting utility as well, with his incredibly fast neutral signature and his lengthy active frames on it as well as Down SIG. He has some good coverage, but these do put him at risk for punish options. He's still a really good character in my opinion, and I think that he'll continue to see good competitive results, especially in 2s, though I do think that he could use some better skins. Today's code to put down in the comments is Ragnarok, along with your Twitter handle or social media of your preference. Also, feel free to check out my Twitch channel. I'll be streaming 1v1 viewer battles next week. The channel will be linked in the description down below. Tune in tomorrow for coverage on the highest voted legend from this week. Comment to vote for next week's 5 legends. I'll be continuing this once a day, Monday through Friday, over the next 10 weeks until all 50 legends are covered. So, thanks for joining me on this ride. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the release of your favorite legend, and I hope to see you back for the next one. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.